So what's up, everybody? You'll probably be weirded out by the fact that Dust is introing a video on adreN's YouTube channel. Like, that's probably the way we'll start this.
I was like, maybe I should intro it. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, so basically what we wanted to do is both of us are going to be attending DreamHack Austin. For adreN, this is kind of his debut as broadcast talent at an offline tournament. And for me, I'll be attending as a commentator. And so what we thought would be cool to do for some content for adreN's YouTube channel is just do kind of a preview for DreamHack Austin, basically. Just kind of talk about the teams, maybe do some predictions, and just kind of get a feel for what the event's going to be. But the way I want to start this out before we actually start previewing the event itself is, as I mentioned, this is adreN's debut of being a broadcast talent at an offline event. Kind of, what's your thoughts on stepping into this, I guess, would be kind of my just a question to ask.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that this is going to be my first time doing it, because I feel like I've already done it, but I've actually never done it at LAN, at an event, right? Because I don't know, I feel like it'll be pretty natural for me. Hopefully, hopefully it goes well, but I think it'll be pretty natural for me just since I feel like I do it already. So it doesn't feel like a first time, even though it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, as far as breaking down plays and things like that goes, you've done that type of content either on your own or what you're doing with Boomio now. Now you're just going to be putting that information out there in a different way or using it differently, so to speak.
Yeah.
Is this something you've always kind of wanted to try, do you think? Or was it just like on a whim you decided to kind of do this event? Or what do you think about that?
Well, while I'm not a pro right now, I don't know. I just thought it was a good opportunity to just see if I like it and see if I want to do it in the future, and why not, why not start now? They contacted me, were like, hey, we're looking for another analyst. I was like, all right, let's do it. So
that's it. There you go.
Yeah.
So I guess you kind of already mentioned you don't know if you'll even like it or not, but do you foresee this being something that you might do more in the future?
I wouldn't mind doing like one event a month or something, if I like it. Just like if I have a free weekend and there's an event going on and they need someone, or, I contact them like, hey, I'm available this weekend, like if you want me as an analyst or whatever. Yeah, I think that would be awesome. I don't want it to be my main gig right now unless I really like it at Austin. And it's like, hey, I want to drop everything I'm doing, like put the stream kind of like second tier to my, what I'm doing. And I want to be like an analyst and get on as many desks as possible. But right now, I think it's just, I want it to be like kind of a side thing, because I do like being an analyst and, providing that kind of content for people. So I don't know, we'll see how it goes.
I mean, would you ever dabble in the commentary as well, since you've already kind of dabbled with that online, or do you think that you would prefer being an analyst at offline events?
I just feel so inexperienced as like a caster. I don't know if I would be. I don't know about that. I feel like I wouldn't be as good as a caster as some of the people already out there. So I'd rather stick to what I know I'd be good at, which is going to be an analyst. So.
Now let's get into the meat and potatoes of what we even wanted to do with this video, and that is previewing the teams and groups and predictions and all that good stuff for DreamHack Austin. So I'm going to throw up Group A first, running it down. It is HellRaisers, Gambit, Heroic, and Luminosity.
Before we get into it, who's winning the event?
We're doing that now, though? We're going to do that at the end?
Yep. Oh, we're doing
You're
it now.
steering this shit. It's your channel.
Now. I'm going with G2.
Yeah, obvious. I think it's G2's event to lose, right?
Yeah, okay, that's what I was thinking. It's their event to lose. But looking at all the teams before we even go into the specific groups,
okay, sure.
I would say like every team's mentality going into this is like, hey, there's not that many good teams here. Like you said, the Astralis and Virtus Pros aren't here. Like every team should be gunning to win this thing, and they should actually feel like they have a chance. Because I don't think G2's like that crazy. I mean, they've actually been on a super good streak lately. I think in EPL they were like started out 1-8, now they're like 13-9, so they're like on a 12.
They're number one now in the league, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Because they're at the very, very, very bottom.
Yeah, it was definitely a rough start, but then obviously they've really picked it up lately. Yeah. And when you look at Group A, I mean, I feel like off the back of the Katowice performance from Heroic, where they placed top 4 at that event, and you think about how they've been slowly piecing together a team full of like this upcoming Danish youth that has a lot of skill. Like obviously Valda has proven that time and time again by now, and then this Nikolai guy. Now they have this Yugi guy. Snappy seems to be a capable in-game leader. Madi's like this kind of wily veteran who seems to be able to kind of fill support roles. So they have a lot going for them as well. Gambit, just came off the back of a second place finish at Summit. They're a team that has looked pretty good at best of once. It's just their map pool has kind of been their biggest obstacle, it feels like. And then obviously HellRaisers look nuts online lately, and then they placed top 4 at Star Ladder. So this is just kind of running through the teams here in Group A really quick. We'll go back to HellRaisers. Let's start with them, right? And we'll just kind of go from top to bottom on the graphic that I have here.
This is the biggest question mark for me personally, because I never watch HellRaisers matches. So maybe you can talk a little bit about them, because this is the team I know the least about, definitely, at the whole event.
So basically, though, lately online they've looked pretty damn good. Like, obviously they qualified for this event, and they had to beat like Vegas Squadron and Mouse Sports and stuff to do that. They qualified for DreamHack Tour as well, beating Flipside and Tricked to do that. They obviously qualified for Star Ladder, which was probably the biggest thing they did online, and that included beating this G2 team as well as beating Envious. And so this was like some really good online results. Then they go to LAN, and they had obviously a good finish at Star Ladder, where they placed top 4. Even beating North in the best of 3 to do that, while in the group stages beating guys like FaZe and NIP and also CLG to make it. So that's like what things have looked like recently. If you go back even further, they obviously qualified for the E-League Major, but then they went 0-3 out in the group stages there. Really struggled to make playoffs. We're one of the first teams to get eliminated from that major, right? And then you could go back even further into last year, but now we're getting to like 6 months ago, and so I don't want to like drift back that far.
Won't touch on that stuff.
But I will say this about HellRaisers, watching them play lately, because you said you haven't really watched them so much, you don't really know about them too much tactically. I will say this looks like one of the most well put together versions of the team I've ever seen strategically. I feel like they always kind of lacked for that in the past, but they always had like enough star power to still cause upsets and best of ones and like be a nuisance.
I think it is Angel being the IGL, right?
Yeah, it is. But from what I can tell,
he's been around for so long, you gotta say that he understands Counter-Strike and how to set up a good team.
Right. I also know that Sticko did an interview with a guy by the name of Tolkien Fanatic, who's out there who does YouTube content. And Sticko really talked about how much coaching has helped HellRaisers. Like, they had LMBT as their coach, who now coaches Mouse Sports. And apparently that coach really helped them with like the basics, like building a default and establishing roles and how to play through the round and based on reads adjust. LMBT. I don't know if it's like Lambert or something. I'm not sure, but I know he coaches Mouse Sports now, if I'm not mistaken. And now they have a new coach, which again, name slips me for whatever reason. And this coach has really helped them apparently like be more dynamic and like add nifty executes, or be a little bit more individualistic at times and like open up things for their playmakers to make plays and be looser. So now because they've had like 2 different coaches who have kind of brought 2 different things to the table for the team over time, they have a really dynamic playbook actually. Like, they can obviously be very aggressive and loose, but they also can play slower defaults, and they can nip, like they cherry pick some executes from like Nip and stuff like that and kind of add their own unique flavor to them. And so they actually have like pretty good approach to the game. And this is also one of the teams where I feel like usually they have pretty equal frag distribution. Like, everyone seems to contribite pretty well when they're winning games. So
question is, are they making it out of groups? Because I would guess Heroic and Gambit. Those would be my 2 guesses.
Yeah, those are definitely the 2 that
you're making HellRaisers sound really good right now.
They're definitely going to challenge to come out of this group, especially in best of 1 situations where their map pool is not going to burden them as much. When theoretically you're going to reach some type of middle ground, I think that they're like my team that I think can make it out. But yeah, Gambit and Heroic are my favorites, and I've pretty much have written Luminosity off. But we'll get to Luminosity in a second. Yeah. In this particular group. But so for you, for HellRaisers, you think is it kind of the same thing for you? They're kind of like 3rd on your list, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I would put them 3rd on my list. Yeah. Yep, over Luminosity. All right, moving on though.
Yeah, that's Gambit. Tell me what you think about Gambit, adreN. What do you got? Gambit.
Yeah, I mean, they have the player adreN, so I mean, they're gonna win. They're the best. I mean, adreN's actually fucking insane. And they've been looking better. Like, I give a lot of props to Zeus, actually. I think, like, Gambit has been just insane since they just got Zeus. I think Zeus is, like, a super underrated player, or super underappreciated from, like, most people in the scene, until, like, just because on Navi, he, like, he didn't really stand out as, like a big, like, impact player on Navi, but you can see how much he brings to a team, right?
Yeah, he's definitely one of those guys that still really relies on like that slow, methodical default style of play. I feel like a lot of teams have started to get away from that, or at the very least they've added like pacing changes, where Zeus still really holds on to that style of play. Though I will say on Gambit, you definitely have seen them now incorporating pacing changes into their gameplay, which is nice to see them kind of be a little bit more diverse. Yeah, definitely. They've done well in the smaller events. They won DreamHack Winter last year, obviously. They won Acer Predator Masters last year as well. They were able to make it to playoffs at the Major, you know, doing really well in the group stages at that event, beating FaZe, beating North in best-of-1 situations. They had a little bit of a speed bump at Vegas and Starladder. They didn't look nearly as good, you know, not even making out of groups at Starladder, for example. So, but Summit, they looked like they were back to being competitive again.
That looked good at Summit. Yep.
So it almost feels like Starladder's the outlier, and it feels more like what we saw at Summit, what we saw at the Major. You know, those are more of Gambit's true colors. I will say their online play has been scary in the sense that they didn't even qualify for ECS, and then they got knocked out by Big in the ESEA like Mountain Dew League. So they're already out, so they don't even have a chance to get into EPL next season, it doesn't look like.
Wow.
Unless they have like another way in.
That's the case for a lot of older players. Like it comes back to me thinking of like VP Online. Like they don't maybe get as hyped up or as super focused as they would if it was a big LAN event with with like the stage, everything going on. And I feel like Gambit has a lot of old players like that. You know what I mean? With like adreN, Dozia, Zeus. So I don't know. I kind of just get that same feeling of like they're just not as insane online. But they're really good performers under pressure on LAN.
Yeah, my one concern, and I want to get your take on this actually as like an in-game leader who has to think about pick banning and has to think about map pool a lot. We know that Gambit are nuts on Cobblestone and Overpass. Like they've time and time again proven that they are very competitive on those two maps. But then once you get past those two maps, it becomes very difficult to figure out what else they have left. I think their Inferno seems to be maybe getting somewhere out of Summit. They beat Optic and SK on Inferno in the semis or the lower bracket finals and the grand finals. So maybe they're working Inferno into their map pool. Like maybe that's kind of where we're starting to see them gain some more ground in it. But outside of that, you become really concerned on what else is there because they pretty much don't play a Mirage or Cash. So that's two really big thorns in their side there that you can only ban one of those maps in a best of 3. And if the other team you're playing against is even somewhat capable on which one you don't ban, that's already almost an auto loss. So that's kind of my concern about Gambit is how do they handle that? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, right now there's not really much they can do with how busy they are. I mean, they're at Summit last weekend. This weekend they're going to be at Austin. So it's not really like they have much time to even try to improve the maps they're weaker at. I don't think it's like an auto loss for them against anyone in this group. I think they're the favorites for this group, and no matter what map they play on, they have a good chance of winning. But for maybe their weaker maps, I mean, you just gotta play with it, play confident. But I don't think they're like really bad on like any map that it's like a free win for another team. They might be able to work around it and just check like if Luminosity favors Cash a lot against Gambit. Gambit will obviously ban that if it's like their best map, right? Yeah. So I think they can work with. Against these teams at Austin, I think they can work around their map pool. That's
definitely a fair point. Just a quick note, we talked about how good adreN's been for this team. He seems like one of the most effective entry fraggers right now in the world. Like, he's definitely the star of his team. He's had some massive performances, for quite some time now, and he's definitely has a huge impact on the game for this team. Also give some shouts to Hobbit and Mo. I think those two players have also been solid. Hobbit's been kind of like one of those young, new players coming up from the CIS region that has, really been hitting his stride as a more passive rifle, so kind of like a polar opposite to adreN almost in style of play. And then, like I said, Mo is certainly a capable opper.
Oh, yeah. Yep, everyone on the Gambit, it's pretty nuts. So, and they all know what they're doing for the most part with Zeus behind them. So
now that we've talked about Gambit, do you think they'll take the group, or are you feeling?
Yeah, I think Gambit should take this group.
That's your number one out. Okay.
Yeah, that's my number one out here.
So next team's Heroic, because Gambit's my number 2 out. I don't know. I don't know why. I'm rolling the dice on Heroic to go 1.
Okay. All right.
So this is what we were gonna defer, I guess, is that. We both had the same 2 teams coming out. It's just in a different order. Is really different here. So I'm going to take Heroic. So what can you tell me about Heroic, adreN? What are your just on the surface thoughts, gut reaction about Heroic?
Man, I don't even know. Heroic is just like HellRaisers for me. I don't really watch these guys much, Heroic, I don't know. We're doing research. This is my research right here. You're giving me some knowledge. I'm gonna look into them a little bit, but I don't know about Heroic. I haven't honestly seen them too much since they swapped out a couple of their players.
Yeah, they definitely like had a lot of roster transactions occur. Yeah. You know, they lost Glaive to Astralis, picked up Nikolai. They, you know, basically cut Freeze, and then they picked up this Yugi guy. So there's been some roster moves over the last, you know, few months for them for sure. They obviously got notoriety last year because they beat Dignitas and Astralis to take first at like this Danish LAN. This is like August of last year, so we're going way back. And ever since then, they've gotten some good group stage best of one results here and there. Particularly, I would say they played at IEM Oakland. They got a map off of SK there. They had a map off of Mouse Sports as well, but then still didn't make it out the groups. They did well at some of the Northern Arena events on Canadian soil. Top 4 at Montreal. They took 3rd at Toronto. But they've also had some blips, right? Like DreamHack Leipzig, I think, was a big disappointment. They lost to Big in a best of 3 there. I think that was kind of a disappointment. But then they had this Katowice result, right? Which is basically like the last one that they've played offline at least. And they took top 4 there.
Current roster?
This is the first event with Yugi was in fact Katowice. It was like his debut. They had a great group stage. They beat North, Navi, and VP, but then they lost to Astralis in a really close best of 3. So again, they don't really have a lot of best of 3 results under their belt, but they've always been really good in best of 1 group stage situations, and they've been competitive in best of 3s against elite level teams. So definitely results wise, they're a team to watch out for. And again, they're prided on their youthful talent, like Valda particularly. And then Nikolai seems to be shaping up pretty well, and this Yugi guy might be like another guy to keep an eye on.
The team barely, so he seems pretty nuts for them so far.
Yeah, in online play, he's definitely been really solid. I will say they've had their issues though.
Looking at their last 2 matches, a 16-9 versus VP and a 16-1 versus VP. So they beat them in, you know, the last 2 maps versus VP, which is pretty nuts. And they beat Fnatic 16-6 for the last 3 matches. That's pretty nuts.
They've had some problem areas, but certainly they had a good result at Katowice with this 5, and they've always, like I said, looked really competitive. Definitely, we know this team like kind of indicates how deep Denmark is, right? Because you know how good North and Astralis are, and even this team is a potential top 10 target. Yeah. So I definitely like them. I think they have a good approach to the game as well. I think Snappy is actually a really capable in-game leader. He's one of the guys that started out not even doing it, and then just kind of really embraced it and just took it head on and really just dedicated himself to it fully. So maybe kind of a lesson out there that even if you're not super well known for a role, if you embrace it and you really put your all into it, it's possible that you can still be quite good at it. And again, they're a very dynamic team, mostly aggressive, but they definitely can throw in cool execs and do some complex stuff as well. So they have a pretty well-balanced playbook, and like I said, they have a lot of young talent. So yeah, this is my team that come out first. Do you have them second, in your opinion?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Gambit being first still, and then Heroic. I really want to see Heroic play more. So this event, I'll be definitely watching out for them.
So last but not least, we got Luminosity, adreN. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I just don't see them beating like any of these teams consistently. Like maybe in a BL1 they get in the upper bracket, but then I just can't see them beating a best of 3. I haven't seen enough. And actually, just to give a little story about like how I think the team is this past weekend, the team I play for, Mythic, you know, just a kind of a fun team. We're streaming, having fun. We were playing in the open qualifier for, I think, ESL1 Cologne, I believe it was, and so was Luminosity.
Okay.
And Luminosity lost to a ESEA main team. So, and we actually lost to them too. But
what was the name of the team? Do you know?
I think their new name is Heat. They're like their name last season was X Incognito or something like that.
Yeah,
and they played main. They played main. They didn't even make playoffs for main, for ESEA. And you know they're beating Luminosity, so that's kind of like a big like oh god, like what's happening in Luminosity? What's happening with Luminosity right now? It was just a best of 1 and it's online, but I don't know. I'm just not. I haven't been impressed by Luminosity at all yet.
I think that's fair. I will say they have made progress because I feel like when I was watching them last season of ECS Season 2, because I actually was like at the London studio covering some of their games with Bardoff and DDK and Vendetta, and when I was watching them play back then last year, they just looked so lost. Like they would play really slow, but they almost played slow for the sake of playing slow and didn't even really seem to have like goals in mind.
Yeah.
So it just looked like really like I didn't know what they were even trying to do. They were getting waxed like in some of the earlier games I watched them play in ECS. But they've gotten, I will say they've made progress. They seem to now have, they still play pretty slow most of the time, but it does feel like they have an idea now what they want to accomplish. You know, like they seem to have like better ideas and like how to work together to take some map control or like set themselves up for something. So I will say they've made progress. I think their online results have made progress as well. They have at times like taken maps off of some of the top teams in EPL and such. But I will say this, like when they've played online best of threes, they've never really beaten like an elite NA team yet in a best of three. They're like a middle of the pack NA team, it feels like.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, like at the start of this, I think any team at this event can really beat the other team. Like Group A is actually, I think, really close, and Luminosity for sure could get out of the groups if they play well, 100%.
I think it's just so hard to know because they've never played an offline event with their full five that I'm aware of that I could find. I think the core four has played an event. Like I think they even maybe played it like ESWC or some like event overseas, but I think they were using a stand-in for their fifth or something like that. So I've never seen them play offline with their full five, and so you never know like how that's going to transition over. So yeah, I don't really know what to expect from them. I will say they have a couple of players who do look quite skilled. Like I think Yell as an opper like has pretty consistently performed for them in an online setting. I think this Shiz guy, like a very young player, has also looked quite skilled. I've heard a lot of good things about Destiny, but he just doesn't seem to be as impressive as Shiz to me personally. And I'll even say like apparently PKL is their in-game leader, and for an in-game leader he actually does put up numbers like pretty decently for in IGL terms at least. And then even Showtime seems kind of revitalized on this team. I know he had kind of a tough time standing in for SK after the whole Tempo Storm thing.
I think it's all like a confidence thing with him because Showtime obviously has like some talent. So I think he just needed to be in his comfort zone more and just, you know, be able to make the plays that he wants to do and just kind of, you know, just be more confident with his play.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's something there. I think they've already made progress because to me, they didn't look competitive at all at first, and now they seem like a middle-of-the-pack professional team in the region. So they've definitely taken one step forward, but will they take that next step forward to actually transition well into offline play and like start challenging some of the higher-ranked teams in the region? Like they have to kind of prove that to me first, I guess, before I can like start predicting them to actually make it out of this group.
Yeah, this is definitely a good stepping stone group for them to work with, right? You're not facing the absolute best out there. And so you're not going to get like absolutely crushed. So you'll be actually able to take something back from your demos to review, even if you do lose, right? Because you know, I assume some of these matches are going to be really close for them. So they'll have a lot of experience growth through this event, I think, too.
So to finalize Group A really quick before we move on to Group B, I have Heroic coming out first and Gambit second. You have Gambit coming out first and Heroic second. Is that correct?
Yep.
So there you have it. All right, that's Group A. Group B, Immortals up first.
Personally, being from NA, we have Liquid, Immortals, Cloud9, and G2.
Yeah, this is a sick, nasty group. I think Group B is definitely the harder group to pick apart as far as like who we think is going to make it out. Group A, I think, is a little bit easier to kind of wade through, though I think some of HellRaisers' recent results kind of throw a wrench in things a little bit with Gambit and Heroic. But this group is just, I mean, I know G2's getting out. I have a hard time believing they don't make it out of this group.
Yeah.
But then after that, it becomes very difficult.
Yeah.
But let's just take it team by team first, adreN. Then we'll do our predictions at the end this time, because this is a little bit more tricky, right? So we'll start off with Immortals. adreN, obviously, they just picked up FNX because of the whole basically Phelps trade with SK. Steel is also a fairly recent addition as an in-game leader who replaced Zeus, who was in-game leading for a little bit there for them.
What are some of the recent LAN events?
So they went out in groups at Star Ladder. Like the only wins they got there were against that 5-power team or UYA, like the Asian team, and they beat MVP Project, but they lost to CLG on Cash, huge. They lost to FaZe and they lost to North. So that was a really poor showing at Star Ladder for them. Did well to qualify for it online, and they've done pretty well online in general. And then, of course, their first offline event that they played with FNX was actually at IM Katowice, and they did well there. Yeah, they took top 4. And online play, I think, for them in general has looked pretty good. Like, they've qualified for everything they've tried to qualify for. They're ranked well in EPL. They're definitely in playoff contention for that. So, yeah, a lot of things have looked up for them with the exception of this whole Star Ladder thing, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're looking good. Like, I think Liquid, Immortals, and Cloud9 are so close together in terms of performance that it's I don't know. It's really hard to tell like who's gonna win some of these matches here. They're gonna be close. I think they're actually in a better place than Liquid right now, and Immortals can definitely beat Cloud9, but I don't know, man.
Yeah, I mean, I personally like Immortals. I think that Steel as an in-game leader kind of brought them back to their like almost like their Tempo Storm roots as far as really solidifying their defaults and like making sure everyone was on the same page and like, establishing the roles again and like really just getting them functioning on a basic level, and then having that foundation and then kind of, you know, rolling out new stuff. So I think he's really kind of grabbed the reins of the team well. So I respect to Steel for kind of getting them strategically back in order after kind of them being looking like they were kind of in disarray at times. Bolts has always been kind of a rock player for this team as a rifler. And then you add in FNX, who has a little bit more...
Yeah. I think with Bolts and FNX, you have like two super solid players that you can rely on. They're always going to make like good decisions and just going to be there and have good performances. And then, yeah, like you said, like Steel adding in actually some structure into the team. And then you have Henny, was just like, he can be absolutely nuts with an op. And Lucas has actually recently been performing way better than he used to. Honestly.
I always felt like he was fairly undervalued, and obviously it's because there were guys on this team like Phelps, like Henny, like Bolts,
so you're not looking at him.
who were always big breadwinners of the team. I will say Lucas has had his struggles at Starladder and Katowice, so like since FNX joined, he seems to struggle a little bit, but he definitely was doing his job as an entry fragger for quite some time for Immortals, like doing well within his role to set up Phelps or to open things up for his team. I think Henny, to me, is just a wild card. Like, you never really know what you're going to get. When he's on, he's on. Like at Katowice, he was absolutely nuts. He's been nuts at other events as well for them, like Oakland and some of these other events. He was just a fucking monster. But then he really didn't seem at all in form at Starladder. Like, he seemed to be like one of the problem areas for the team, is that he just wasn't clicking. And I think that's always really difficult to deal with when you have a player who's like can either be super hot and like really impact the game, or super cold and like it almost like drags you down because you rely on him so much to like build around what he can do with an op, and then all of a sudden you don't have that anymore. And that can definitely be an issue. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, just when I think of Immortals, I just for some reason don't think they play well when there's like a lot on the line. There's a lot of pressure. If I'm not mistaken, Immortals has never been to a major, right? I think they've choked at every single qualifier.
Yeah.
And that's just like and I think in this LAN here coming up, they shouldn't have any like confidence issues with any of these teams or any of the people they're gonna be facing against. So I think they should really like shine through. But like I've always thought they never played well under a ton amount of pressure.
Yeah, it's actually interesting you say that, because I know that Launders recently did an interview with Zach, who's their coach. This came out just a few days ago, actually, before we're putting this video out.
Zach, what's his like? I don't know him at all.
Zach, it's like Z-A-K-K. Just Zach.
Oh, okay, yeah. He was an old player.
So he kind of actually had like an interview with Launders where he actually brought this point up, where it seems like sometimes they'll just like mentally check out of a situation, and like the way he phrased it was, as they go into a game where they know that they definitely should win, they should win the game. They know they should win the game. And somehow when it starts to fall apart, it really gets them like, we should be winning this game. Like, oh no, are we really not going to win this game? We should definitely win. And so apparently there is a little bit of like a mental fortitude type of a situation there. I'm also just really curious, you know, how you set this up role wise, because in the past, like Steel and Bolts have always been kind of like peripheral role players. And then it was kind of like Lucas and Phelps with a 1-2 punch entry duo, and then you had Henny, like, who was a big factor with the op. And now you've lost Phelps. You've brought in FNX, who in his own right was known as more of like a passive, supportive type player for SK. And so you have to wonder who's going to give here. Like, is FNX going to give and, like, you know, be more of a active factor on the team? On some maps, he definitely is going to be doing that from what I can tell so far. Is someone like Steel going to have to step in and be a little bit more assertive if FNX is going to play a little bit more supportive? On some maps, that seems to be the case as well now. It seems to be map dependent at this point when I watch them play on, like, how the roles shape out. So I kind of wonder if they're ever going to figure that part. I think that's going to be one of the biggest keys to them being successful long term, is trying to figure out how to balance out the team as far as how they want to set everyone up role wise.
Yeah, because I mean, FNX and Phelps is obviously like the two extremes, really. In terms of like playstyle, Phelps is super aggressive. FNX being like the more passive, you know, clutch player. He's gonna be staying alive late rounds. But I mean, talking about like the pressure situation, like I think FNX is actually like really amazing in like clutches and just being like, no matter like what's on the line, I think FNX is like a super clutch player for them. So in that terms, like I think FNX is gonna help a lot. But in terms of like who's gonna actually open up the map, I don't know, or make the first play, like you said.
I mean, it's definitely still Lucas as far as like a first man in type of situation. It feels like, and then Henny in his own right can be very aggressive with the ops, so that's going to be something else that you can kind of build around. But yeah, again, I think sometimes it's going to be FNX that might follow up Lucas. Maybe sometimes it's going to be like Bolts or Steel instead. I think like they're still trying to figure that out. Like on Cobblestone, for instance, I feel like I see them kind of changing up who's doing what quite often. Whereas Cash, it feels like FNX is going to be the more active guy. That's just a couple of examples, but you get my point. I think they're still trying to figure out what their identity is with this lineup change. But I definitely think they are a strong contender to come out of this group. In fact, if we have to go ahead and do it now, I will say it's G2 and Immortals that come out of this group.
Yeah, that's honestly what I was leaning towards. I was thinking between like a G2 for sure, obviously, because we both said they'd win the event. And the second one, I was leaning between Immortals and Cloud9, but you know, I'm just leaning towards Immortals for some reason.
Okay. So let's talk about G2 now, and then we'll pick like who's our 1, who's our 2 after that, okay? And then we'll talk about Cloud9 a little bit. So G2, obviously, there's not so much to talk about because they made like a really big roster move. Like they basically took the core of Envious, which was like Apex, MBK, and Kenny S, and they combine it with Shox and Body, the 2 remaining from G2. And this is obviously like great because now we're seeing Shox and Kenny S on the same team for the first time. Huge talents in their respective roles. You're seeing like what was really dubbed like a dream team come together basically from the French scene on this lineup. And so far, despite the slow start in EPL, I guess you could say, they've now become the #1 team in that league, and their offline debut at Star Ladder, they rocked the group stages, and they were pretty competitive against the eventual champions of the tournament and the best they played there in the quarterfinals. So obviously a sick amount of talent on the team. What do you think about this team?
I think with Shox and Kenny S, like that double op setup is like one of the best in the world for sure. So I think when Shox grabs the op with Kenny, it's just like their CT sides can just be like rock solid. So I don't know. I think once that op combos comes out, I don't think there's a team here that can really compete with that lineup of ops for sure.
It's even on the T side, by the way. Like I've noticed that G2 using double ops on T side more often than pretty much any other team in Counter-Strike. Occasionally you would see VP do it. Occasionally Navi would do it. Mouse Sports was pretty well known for doing it as well with like Oscar and Chris J, or like Oscar.
I remember them doing it
Nico.
On like Dust too, but now that's not
almost
in the map
every
pool.
single map that G2 plays, they will at some point run a double op on the Terra side. Even on Inferno, I've seen it. I'm not saying it's like commonplace and they do it all the time.
Right.
I'm just saying you definitely will see them bring out double ops on the T side on almost every single map in the rotation. They're capable of doing that, and that's always interesting. It's just crazy, like the amount of flexibility they have too, because someone like Shox will lurk, obviously, is like his main role.
Yeah.
But he will just break off from that and just be like, fuck it, I'm rushing A. And I'm going to open this up. And it's just like,
He's
when you
just
have
a
someone
super
who can do that,
player.
there's nothing Shox can't do. He in-game leads, he lurks, he entries, he ops. He's one of the most versatile talents in the game, period. And he excels at all of those roles, for the most part. So yeah, he's a crazy playmaker. Obviously, Kenny is one of the best operators out there. MBK in its own right is very flexible in what type of roles he can play. And it feels like he's getting in better form lately as well. I will also say this about G2. When I watch them play now, I feel like before, like G2 and Envious, for example, we're always just known as being like more loose, aggressive teams. Is that kind of fair to say? Like, is that how you define?
Like freestyle, IGLing. Yep.
I feel like this G2 has a bit more depth to it. Like when I watch them play, I feel like I do see some more complex executes come out at times. Like they have a really sick fake on Cash I've never seen anyone else do before that looked really awesome. I don't know if it's like a gimmicky thing that'll only work like maybe once or twice. I'm not gonna describe it in detail, but they have a couple of cool, complex little gimmicky type executes that I just feel were not really a part of their play before that are now. I don't know if the credit that to Smiths, like as a coach, if he's coming up with this stuff, or if they have like an analyst helping them come up with stuff, or I'm not sure who's the credit for this, but I definitely feel like there's a little bit more there to them on T sides than maybe the previous iteration was, and that can only help them if they're more diverse.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I assume when they first got this team together, they probably realized that maybe they do need some more depth, because they were struggling a lot when they first got put together. But now, I mean, as they're developing and playing more together, you know, maybe adding more to their strategy, more to their strat book, I mean, they're looking good, man. So
yeah, I'm curious to see how their map pool is going to shape out. I think their nuke has already proven to be excellent. Like online, they're nuts on it, and they've played it once offline and won. I'm kind of waiting to see what else maps are going to kind of emerge from them as being really good. It seems like their Cobblestone's still pretty good, which both old G2 and old Envy were both known to be pretty solid on that map. The old G2 was known to be really solid on Overpass, but the core of Envious that have come to G2 never played the map really. So kind of interesting to see how that'll shape out. So yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how their map pool fills in, but definitely a lot of talent, definitely some good initial signs, definitely a team that we see making it out of the groups, if not winning the whole tournament. Maybe that, I don't know, are we giving them too much credit to say they'll win the whole tournament when we haven't seen that much of them offline? Is that like really, I feel like there's not so many teams here though that really, like if an Astralis was here or something, or a VP was here, or an SK was here, maybe I wouldn't be so confident in saying that, but in this lineup, I feel like it's not so far-fetched to claim that. I mean, what do you think?
yeah, I mean, I'm still gonna stick with it's their event to lose, even though, you know, they're pretty new, like 5 together, but you know, I think they're finally starting to click, and I don't think people are gonna have the depth yet to beat them.
So here comes the debate then. Like, how do you? Well, we both think Immortals and G2 make it out the group, but how do you seed them?
How do you seed them?
Yeah, like who would you say comes out first? Who comes out second?
I would say G2. I'd still pick G2 coming out first.
And Immortals second?
Yeah.
I'm taking the exact same thing. So so far, the only way we defer right now is how we seeded Gambit and Heroic out of Group A. And so apparently my dog is now going to join the show. He just jumped on my bed. Feels dog, man. Feels dog, man. Anyway, so moving on to Cloud9. What do we got, adreN? Give me your thoughts on Cloud9.
I think Cloud9 is looking decent right now, honestly. I mean, they actually didn't play with Skadoodle, now that I think about it, at the last event. So that might be a little weird. A little bit of...
It's a little bit weird.
Yeah, well, that's a little bit weird. So, I mean, he's going to come back in. And basically, I mean, the thing is, like, Swag and Skadoodle aren't that far off of each other. I mean, they're both really passive players. Like, Brax clears everything, like, 3 times before he goes into a bomb site. And Skadoodle is super passive, always holding super passive spots with his op, you know, gonna play pretty consistently on, you know, where he's gonna play and whatnot. So in terms of like play style between those two players, they're not like entirely like different. So it's not that big of a deal. I think what everyone here is worried about is like whether or not Shroud is gonna, you know, kick it up a notch, because he's been pretty lackluster, right?
Yeah.
I think Cloud9 got 4th at Summit, but like Shroud was one of the worst players at the event statistically. So
yes,
he just looks very, like, watching him, he looks very stationary, like, and immobile when he's playing. Like, I don't know, he like picks a spot, it's almost like, I don't know, sitting there instead of like really trying to like, you know, gather what's going on, being mobile, harder to hit. Yeah, I don't know, I think it's just in his head. Shroud obviously has talent, and maybe he needs like a coach to kind of tell him like, hey man, you're always playing the same exact spot every single round. People know how you play. You need to change up your style. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think he definitely needs to change up his style a little bit and kind of get more loose with it and have more. He needs to have more like plays to do, on how he plays. Honestly.
Yeah, I feel kind of weird about it, because it feels like he started performing like not so hot, and then they almost pass it off like, well, I'm going to be a support player now. So because you're not performing well, you want to be more supportive. But really nothing's changed. Like, he still plays the same spots for the most part.
Right.
Also,
Yeah,
the weird thing,
like...
here's the other weird thing about it, okay? You ready for this one? This is the kicker that I still don't understand. And I'm not trying to, like, throw shade, but... So he says he's going to be more of a supportive player. So to me, that means that you're probably going to buy some utility. You're going to be, maybe using your flashes and smokes to set people up.
He actually said this?
He said he's going to be more of a supportive player on his stream. Yeah, it's been passed around a lot. Okay. So to me, that would mean that maybe you're going to have a little bit more utility, like more smokes, more flashes, mollies, whatever. You're trying to set people up. I mean, is that a fair assessment
of stuff? Yeah.
But he buys AUGs and SIGs all the time. So that's extra money he's spending on his primary weapon. So I
don't know.
And he's one of the only people.
Maybe he death matches more with the AUG than the M4. I have no idea.
I mean, he says, like, I actually asked him about this because I saw him doing it online a shit ton. Like, in that iBuyPower Invitational tournament that just recently happened, he, like, almost every single round he was buying an AUG or an AUG or a SIG instead of an M4 or AK every single time. Did it in EPL as well. I didn't really see too much of Summit, so I'm not sure if he did it there as well. But
a little bit.
I know when I asked him about it, he said it's because it has insane stats, and he just wanted to try it out and see how it worked. Because obviously, Magis Boy kind of made the SIG famous when he was using it on Mirage for North, and it looked really sick. And so it's like, oh, I just want to try this out and like see if it works. Like see if it works for me.
I think they're really good guns, honestly.
Yeah, but you also have to wonder, is the reason why he wanted to try it because he felt like he needed to...
A change?
Yeah, he needed something to try to maybe get him back into it. Like maybe this is his way of doing something new to try to get his edge back. I don't know. Like there's definitely a lot of surrounding it. I also wonder this about Shroud. The best CS he ever played was when he was like an entry fragger under Sean. That's the best CS he's ever played.
They should send him out, use his mechanical talent to fucking open up the map. Just send him out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that's what Sean did. He got a lot of production out of him that way. He basically would send Freakazoid in first and then let Shroud play off of that. And for whatever reason, he got moved back to a peripheral role. Yeah, he got moved back to that. And at first, it made sense why he got moved back to a peripheral role because they had Freakazoid and Stewie on the team at the same time at one point.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
But then when Freak left and they brought in Automatic, they moved Shroud back to like more of a peripheral role. So I don't know. It's always kind of weirded me out. Whatever. They have to kind of figure that out. They seem committed to this 5, so I'm kind of curious if they ever make that adjustment.
I mean, it's a good 5 for sure, as long as they can. I mean, Automatic seems like actually a pretty decent. Like he has a pretty decent mindset to be an IGL. So I want to see how that.
Yeah, that's the other thing, right? So Stewie has kind of given the reins over to Automatic, and most recently, I think Automatic called at Summit. And call that iBuyPower Invitational was like his debut calling for the team over Stewie. I mean, I kind of wonder, though, is this really going to revolutionize the identity of Cloud9? Are they really going to be pretty much a similar team just with a new shot caller? I mean, what do you think?
I would say they're probably going to be pretty similar. I don't think Automatic will bring like a completely different style. And they're probably kind of like all chipping in with ideas and you know what I mean? Because Tim's never been in IGL. So I'm pretty sure like in freeze time, it's probably Jordan giving some ideas, Stewie picking some stuff up. That's how I imagine them right now. So
yeah, I
think he might bring his own little flair, but I think the team will like kind of stick with what they like and whatnot.
We'll say this about Cloud9 and a positive. Oh, there's a couple of positives. One, they are performing really well online lately. They won the iBuyPower Invitational. They are doing well in EPL. It seems like they're going to definitely make the finals for that. The only like roadblock they had was they lost to Renegades trying to qualify for Star Ladder, but other than that, they've looked really good online lately. Obviously, Summit went pretty decent for them. But then they had like a pretty rough time offline before that, but we're not going to get to that too much, right? That was a little bit further back.
Yeah, we probably touched enough on Cloud9.
Yeah, I think we have. But I do want to put another positive. I think Skadoodle has looked a lot better lately. I feel like for a while there, he was like a prime target for criticism, mostly because he played at such a high level in 2015 that when people were seeing him... Yeah, and I mean, fair enough, right? Like you're not playing up to the level you've proven you can play at, and so at that point, yeah, and you're the opper. That's a critical role. Good old Morg. Shut up. Anyway, so he's in a critical role as well. The opper's always going to get poked at more than probably anyone else because of the role that they play. But I think he has looked sharper lately. And obviously, Stewie and Automatic have been fine. So, yeah, there's definitely still a lot of building blocks in this team that make them strong. And their online form has been good recently. So let's just see if they can get it translating to the offline play with their full 5. Okay, so we said G2 and Immortals make it out. But how good of a chance does Cloud9 have to kind of wreck our prediction and come out ahead of one of these teams?
Honestly.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if they show up, like if anyone shows up on Cloud9 and they have 5 players that can just absolutely take over a match, yeah, they could beat Immortals easily. Honestly, if everything's going well for them, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
Even Sunday type of thing, but yeah, I mean, Cloud9 could definitely make out of groups.
All right, let's cap it off with Liquid. So Liquid's the last team to talk about for the event. Obviously, they've had some shuffling going on as well. Stanislaw's only been on the team for a couple of months now, coming in for... Who did he come in for? Hiko, I guess?
Pimp?
Yes. No, he came in for Hiko because it was like theoretically a trade kind of happened there where Stan leaves Optic, goes to Liquid, Hiko stands in for Optic for a couple of minutes, doesn't really work out. Then Twist comes in for Pimp because Pimp apparently wanted to leave, didn't see his place in Liquid anymore. Twist, of course, has only been on the team for a handful of online matches, and he played Summit, obviously, with them, and that's it. So they're basically going through a restructure. I mean, new in-game leader, new fifth, new coach.
Yeah.
A lot has changed here. There's not a whole lot to go off of other than online results since Stan joined the team. So like 2 months of online play, basically, which they're competitive in EPL in their own right. Look like they might have a playoff spot out of that as well. Because isn't it 6 teams that qualify, right? So if that's the case, I'm pretty sure they're pretty safe to make it out. And then they obviously had the Summit event where they beat Nip, but then they lost to Gambit and lost to Optic. So it wasn't the best debut, but, you know, they had some maps they look good on. So what are your thoughts on this Liquid team?
I just don't think they have had enough time to really, you know, get their roster down, get their strategies down, get how they're going to integrate Twist into the lineup. And I think they're going to have, like, gaps. And unless they're, like, you know, just relying on their talent alone and they're having, like, really good days where all their players are hitting shots, they could upset. Not even upset. They could beat any of these teams in these groups. But I just don't think they're going to have that strategy to fall back onto yet, or there's those CT side setups, even maybe just the communication. In the late round chemistry, I don't think it'll be quite there yet to beat these teams.
See, for me, it's crazy because when I look at Liquid, I see so much upside. I mean, for one, you've basically grabbed one of the best in-game leaders in the region, if not proven to be the best in-game leader from North America, as far as proven that he can lead a team to victory with Optic like he did. Skilled for an in-game leader, you know, puts up numbers. I think his role flexibility is often overlooked, but he's very flexible on whether he's going to lurk or even entry sometimes. Like, he definitely can bounce around, which is why I think bringing in Twist is fine, because I think Stan can adjust to make sure Twist is comfortable, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like, if Stan was lurking before... Like yeah. If Stan was lurking before and Twist wants to lurk, I don't think Stan has any issue just becoming, like, you know, some type of more supportive entry even type player at times, like I said. So I think they have a lot there, like as far as in-game leadership. I think Zeus brings a lot to the table as a coach. I think you have a great leadership duo between those two, because you have Stan, who likes to play really loose in default and like just kind of make space for his playmakers, and like, I want to set up a Liege to do this, or I want to set up JDM for a pick here, and he's, like I said, just like kind of, you know, give more freedom to his playmakers. And then you have Zeus, who's like the king of coming up with gimmicks, like a gimmick smoke, a gimmick flash, a really cool execute that's going to work a couple of times, a really cool fake that's going to work a couple of times, you know. And he also has those roots of like the system that Fallen had, and like how to work a default a little bit more structured.
Yeah, he's all that XP and experience that he can bring to Liquid, right?
So you basically almost have a full spectrum of how to approach the game between Stan and Zeus, as far as loose and fast defaults, slow defaults, complex execs, gimmicks. Like, you basically have everything leadership-wise, I feel like, on this team, as far as how deep they can be with their playbook. And then you do have a lot of firepower. You have the guy like Elish, who's super hot with the rifle. Twist seems to be a real young upcoming talent from our scene. Stan, in his own right, like we said it as an IGL, puts up numbers. So Nitro seems to be getting back in better shape lately. I will give him some credit. I feel like I've seen him playing a lot stronger lately, even though he had a period there where he looked like he was struggling. It seems like he's making a comeback a little bit. So yeah, there's a lot going for this team. There are a couple of things to worry about, like JDM, for instance. I'm still kind of wondering what's happening there. He doesn't look as strong as he used to. It's been like that for a while. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely noticed JDM's impact is pretty minimal. Just like when playing a really good opponents. I mean, but they have so much fragging power that JDM doesn't really have to, you know, like put these amazing numbers up. So I think as long as JDM is hitting the shots he should be hitting, I don't think he needs to make these like super aggro plays, make it a 5v4 for his team. I think as long as he's just average in, you know, Nitro, Twist, Stan, and Elige can, you know, do work. I think they have so much talent in that regard. I just for some reason don't think they're like clicking yet to where like they really like know how to support each other. And like some of their setups or some of their T-side strategies. I just think the team needs more time. If they can keep this roster for an extended period of time and actually work through everything, I think with Zeus, Stan, and everyone, just really working with this roster, I think this team could be like a team that we could say could win the group, right? But I think they need more time.
So, I mean, if you had to give, like, your overall kind of pros and cons on Liquid and just how you think they'll do in this group then, because we did this with Cloud9, right? Like, we already picked who we think will make it out, but what are realistic chances for Liquid to get out instead, and just what's your overall kind of conclusion on the team?
I mean, with best of ones, I'm going to go and say it again, Liquid can definitely beat these teams. Like, if they get pistol round, get a first gun round, get that momentum, start feeling good, and they have so much talent. Like, if 3 of their players or 2 of their players are playing super, super well, I think they have enough talent to, to beat any of these teams. They have the talent. I think they just need to play like a team.
There we go. So, I mean, I guess we've pretty much wrapped this up now. I mean, really the only thing that we can do now is, I mean, we already said we think GT's going to win the whole event. We have different seeds, so we can't even really do playoff predictions, I guess, because it would be 2 different ones each time, so I don't want to get into that too much.
No.
But I do want to ask a couple more questions really quick here. So G2's our favorite to win the whole thing. Do you have like a dark horse team, so to speak, that you think is also a good chance to win the event?
If I had to pick a dark horse.
So let's define dark horse. It has to be a team that no one expects to win, but is capable of winning. Yeah, we'll define it that way, because I think people define it differently maybe.
I'd say dark horse is Liquid or Cloud9 winning the whole thing.
Okay. Those are reasonable dark horses.
If they show up, they can beat anyone here.
Those are reasonable dark horses. So, okay, what team is most likely to make the finals against G2? Who's like your second favorite team, so to speak?
It depends on like if G2 slips up and gets second seed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But do you have like a second favorite team? Like a second favorite?
For some reason, I'm leaning towards Gambit, but
okay.
I don't know why.
Fair enough.
Maybe because I've just recently watched them, so they're on my head. You know what I mean?
That's perfectly fine.
But
that'll do it then. That's it, man. That's a done deal. Hopefully, all of you folks will tune in to DreamHack Austin to see adreN debut on the desk. I'll be commentating there. The event takes place April 28th through April 30th, last weekend of April. $100,000 in the line. GSL group stage format. Best of 3s for the decider elimination, as well as best of 3s for the semis and grand finals. So format that's familiar with everyone. Second event for DreamHack at Austin. So should be a ton of fun. Definitely check it out, and we'll see you there.
Cool. Thanks.